Hi, I'm Phil LaBelle, Bishop of the Diocese of Olympia. This is our fourth in a series of teaching videos on Zimzum Discipleship, and I'm really glad that you are here. So I love going to movies. The closest theater to me for a long time had a continuing series of short films in the space after the previews but before the main feature. And all of them centered on being courteous to others by turning off your cell phone or not chatting with your neighbor, or in one of the memorable shorts featuring the Muppets, not bringing your own microwave into the theater to cook your own popcorn. Each time it ended with the same phrase, "Silence is golden." Silence. It's not often that we experience it in this life. There's just the ambient noise of motors of one kind or another that are present in our modern daily life. I live in the flight path for SeaTac, just where planes on a northerly route turn south. And so I often hear what time it is and know what time it is when their activity starts up in the morning. Add into this that more pervasive noise in our lives, those alerts and notifications and pings and all the rest. It's overwhelming at best. We live at a time where rarely can we be alone, even with our own thoughts, throughout any day. And I'm reminded of the beginning part of Tolkien's The Hobbit, when he sets that story at a time long ago in the quiet of the world, when there was less noise and more green. Even just hearing those words makes me want to go to the Shire and breathe deeply for a short respite from it all. Silence and solitude. They are key within the biblical text. The idea that we as human beings need a bit of time and space alone with God and our own thoughts, well, it appears again and again and again. We read stories of people encountering God in the wilderness. We get single verses scattered throughout the Gospels with words like, "While it was still very dark, Jesus got up and went out to a deserted place and prayed." Or those familiar words of Psalm 46:10. "Be still and know that I am God." Those words led a retreat leader I was with once to ask the question, does this mean that we can't know God unless we're still? Cal Newport discusses the lack of solitude and its impact on us in his book, Digital Minimalism, Choosing a Focused Life in a Noisy World. In this book, he writes the following: "At the slightest hint of boredom, you can now surreptitiously glance at any number of apps or mobile-adapted websites that have been optimized to provide you an immediate and satisfying dose of input from other minds. It's now possible to completely banish solitude from your life." Thoreau worried about people enjoying less solitude. We must now wonder if people might forget this state of being altogether. He uses the phrase solitude deprivation to describe all of this, and he points to the alarming number of studies that suggest a connection in a rising level of technology use with growing levels of anxiety and other mental health concerns among teens and young adults. Cal doesn't want to banish technology. He is a computer science prof. He just questions its pervasiveness in our lives and the impact of not being alone with our own thoughts. Be still and know that I am God. This really goes beyond whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. That noise from our culture can keep us distracted whether we find energy in groups or not. In part, it's the messages that we receive from that noise, whether implicit or explicit, that pulls us in a myriad of different ways. Thomas Merton explores this impact of outside noise from our society in his book, New Seeds of Contemplation, which was written nearly 65 years ago. Listen to his words. "You will never find interior solitude unless you make some conscious effort to deliver yourself from the desires and the cares and the attachments of an existence in time and in the world. Do everything you can to avoid the noise and the business of human beings. Keep as far away as you can from the places where they gather to cheat and insult one another, to exploit one another, to laugh at one another, to mock one another with their false gestures of friendship. Be glad if you can keep beyond the reach of their radios. Do not bother with their unearthly songs. Do not read their advertisements. The contemplative life certainly does not demand a self-righteous contempt for the habits and diversions of ordinary people. But nevertheless, no one who seeks liberation and light and solitude, no one who seeks spiritual freedom, can afford to yield passively to all the appeals of a society of salesmen, advertisers, and consumers. I wonder what Thomas might be saying now if he were alive today. Because unfortunately, we all fall prey to the messages sent to us by our culture. Those messages that we receive about how we are perceived, or what will make us more attractive, or how important we are based on our jobs, or where we went to school, or the kind of cars that we drive. It's so easy for us to build up these images in our heads of how we need to be, and then barely notice when we follow those ways. Felina Hertz describes this in her book, Mindful Silence. In it, she writes the following words: "It's easier to walk through life asleep. Sleepwalking takes the form of deeply embedded unconscious illusions about self and God and others. These distortions orient us toward psychological, behavioral, and spiritual attachments, compulsions, and addictions, which over time lead to general unhappiness. This is what the Christian tradition calls imperfection, sickness, or sin. Our addictions may not take the form of chemical cravings, though it can turn into that. But at the core reside in our compulsions to be identified with what we have, what we do, what others say about us. We are enslaved to our unconscious impulses and do everything we can to satiate our inner discontent. Nonstop scrolling through social media, which only magnifies our unhappiness, by the way. Unnecessary shopping in the hope that the more stuff will make us feel better. Overeating or drinking to drown and dull the inner ache. We have any number of escape routes from pain, but the path of transformation is learning how to be with the pain so new life can emerge in and through us. Contemplative spirituality," she writes, "teaches us how to do just that." Those contemplative spiritual practices encourage us to invite God into our lives more fully, for God to see us as we are and to be vulnerable with God, be vulnerable to God's loving gaze. Because you see, that's the truth, I think, that is hardest for us as humans to realize. That God looks deep into our souls, all of that stuff that we tried to hide from others on the outside. And God sees us for who we are. And God loves us fully, just as we are. And that love can indeed transform us. Contemplative practices like stillness and meditation aren't easy. Catholic priest Pablo Dors describes this in his book, Biography of Silence. In it, he talks about his own early attempts with this practice. He writes, "It is true that at the beginning, everything seemed more important to me than meditating. But the moment has come when sitting and not doing anything other than being in contact with my own self, present to my present, seems like the most important thing of all. We normally live scattered, that is to say, outside of ourselves. Meditation concentrates us, brings us back home, and it teaches us to live together with our own being. Without this living together with oneself, without our being centered on what really we are, I find a humane and dignified life to be very difficult, if not impossible. Friends, God is calling us to embrace Zimzum, to make space in our lives for solitude and stillness. And you might be thinking that you have no idea of where even to begin. It was in reading Felina Hertz's book that I first learned about the Be Still prayer. It's a very easy and practical way to engage in a little bit of solitude through a breath prayer. Taking the words from Psalm 46, you simply and slowly pray those words through 5 successive times, shortening the prayer each time, taking at least one full breath between the phrases. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. Doing this for a couple of minutes and running through that cycle a few times, well, it helps me at least to be present to God in the current moment. And there's also contemplative prayer and meditation where you can sit for, say, 20 minutes, holding on to a key word or phrase as you let go of all that floods your mind. Personally, I found that while I still feel like a beginner with this, with distractions that come, this regular practice has allowed me to become more present and more compassionate. So I commend it to you. Because we all need more silence and stillness in our lives, simply so that we can quiet the noise that is around us and hear the voice of the one who created us, saying to us, "You are my child, my beloved. With you I am well pleased." I hope you will make time both to hear those words and also to believe them, because they're true. Until next time, dear ones, may God's Spirit continue to guide, care for, and refresh you. And know that you remain in my prayers.